to the Well-Meaning Skeptic. For the first video of this new channel, I want to talk about what I've seen online. You know, people have talked about, are we living now in a dystopian society similar to George Orwell's 1984 or closer to Aldous Huxley's Brave New World? I think it's generally, I guess, more popular for people to think, we're living in 1984 now. This is not good. We need to do something, I guess, or just, you know, resign ourselves to misery. And then other people will say, no, actually, I think we're more living in Brave New World type situation. I find both of those stories very interesting, and thought I wanted to chime in and add my 3 cents or 4 cents, add my tuppence to this conversation. Personally, I think it's kind of more of a mix of both. I don't think we're living in quite as bad a version of either of the books. I don't think we're living full-on 1984 or full-on Brave New World. I think there's still hope. They both kind of end where there's not really much hope. I don't think it's as bad as the extremes of those books. However, I think we're also I think we're a bit of a mix of both. So that's where things get dicey. On the 1984 side of things, we definitely have a lot of surveillance when it comes to, you know, governments being able to tap into people's phones and webcams and the camera's ever-present watchfulness over people. We never really know when we're being watched. We kind of know that we can be watched. Governments could tap into our technology if they want to. The whole Edward Snowden revelation, that's very 1984, I think. And I'd say we also have the 2 minutes of hate situation with 1984 to keep the populace riled up, to have an other and an enemy for us to keep us afraid and just doing what we're told and kind of just not wanting to, you know, ask too many questions or be too curious, and to scapegoat all the frustration we have at how we're living. That's the person that's making us have to ration our food and feel so isolated and feel so controlled. We definitely have that, I'd say, with mainstream news, but definitely things like Fox News. When Bill O'Reilly did his show, it felt very much just like the 2 minutes of hate with, what's it, Goldstein or whatever from 1984, where, you know, he's just listing off stuff. Be mad at these people, blame these people. You know, it's this person's fault for all your woes. And the way everyone's so polarized now with their politics online, you're scrolling and you see a meme or something, and then it makes you get angry at, I can't believe that's happening, or I hate that person, I wish that person would go away. You know, we definitely have that continual reacting to images and people that we think are the cause of bad things. And so I think we definitely have that. The perpetual war, doesn't really matter who you're at war with, Eurasia, now it's East Asia. Again, it keeps people in a tense, uncomfortable, scared place.
The war is not meant to be won. It is meant to be continuous. The essential act of modern warfare is the destruction of the produce of human labor. A hierarchical society is only possible on the basis of poverty and ignorance.
If you want to keep the status quo going, that's a useful tactic. Other stuff. Oh, man. I know Noam Chomsky talks a lot about the higher up you are in terms of the echelons of bureaucracy and government and institutions, the more indoctrinated you actually have to be into the system you're in. With the people that are lower down, that don't really have any status or power, it doesn't really matter all that much what their opinions on things are, because they're not going to be able to do anything about it.
Listen to that. She make a song written by a machine sound so beautiful.
I only remembered this the last time that I went through 1984. In the book, they do have something, I forget the name of it, that's basically like an AI generating music machine, where again, it just turns out kind of poppy, forgettable, but, you know, earwormy kind of music. Again, just to distract and entertain people while there's bombs going off and their life kind of sucks. And I'd say we have that. I mean, we have literal AI making music. I saw a thing for it on my phone recently, but even if you don't want to say direct AI, but just an industry that churns out new kind of cookie cutter music and movies and that, just to kind of keep people talking about frivolous things, trivial things that don't have real significance, I guess, in the broader world of power and who owns what, who controls what, who does what. There's probably other parallels to 1984. I mean, I guess the double think and the wrong think that Orwell has in his book. I mean, you see it especially in certain countries. They have certain crimes. What is it? Non-crimes in Britain. They're starting to use that more. Non-crime. It feels like a very Orwellian term in terms of thought crime, basically, or wrong thinking. And even the double think, I think, kind of like a cognitive dissonance. The world makes you have to deal with cognitive dissonance all the time when it comes to still being pushed to consume by the new latest whatever, and then knowing full well that landfills are getting bigger. It's a giant country of a landfill in the middle of the ocean. There's plenty of cognitive dissonance that we're still battling with all the time. And even just altering language or trying to limit language or try to mess with language in a way that makes it harder for people to communicate. That's an Orwell thing. I feel like politics, no one agrees on what any political terms mean. No one can agree on what socialism means or even what left-wing, right-wing means. No one can agree on any of these political terms, and that really makes discussion about these things hard. So I'm sure that there are still people that are being tortured as horrendously as Winston goes through with the rats, to get him to rat out his other co-conspirators. Moving on to Brave New World, we don't have the extreme version of people literally being raised in test tubes, and for those that are meant to be assigned much more like menial labor and repetitive tasks that require less mental work. I think they put some poison into those test tubes or something, so it actually makes those test tube babies, they can't do more cognitive functioning jobs, so they are bred to only do certain work like elevator operator, or just, I don't know, chimney sweep or whatever, We don't have test tube stuff yet, which is good. But we more or less have a system like that where most people that grow up in an environment where everyone around them is doing, minimum wage, menial labor, it's hard to break out of that for one reason or another. And just the system makes it hard to move around all that much as we like to say we can. It's hard. There's a lot of obstacles. We don't have the preordained, you're going to be working here the rest of your life. You have no choice in the matter. But a lot of times we, in reality do have a lot of people growing up in the environment they're in, and then they end up just working more or less in that environment, in that class, in that milieu, in that situation, in that environment. So there's that part in Brave New World.
Why can't everyone read Shakespeare?
Anyone can, but why would they want to? It wouldn't mean anything to them. Our world isn't Shakespeare's, Great tragedy. All great art really grows out of passion, conflict, social instability, and we don't have any of that anymore. People are happy.
Happy at what cost?
At the cost of art, religion, philosophy, love, science.
Full freedom to access whatever you want, but most people don't really care to, and any meaningful number of people don't care to explore certain ideas or concepts or ways of doing things because they're too busy just popping their soma, which is just their drug that makes them feel really good, euphoric, and then they can just, ignore all the realities of life. The whole thing is just about control people through distraction and pleasure, which, we have with phones, endless TV and movies and entertainment, and constantly bombarded with new stuff to distract yourself with. I do find it hard to read a book. I can do audiobooks, which kind of counts, but also doesn't. I don't think it quite sticks in my head the way reading a book does. What isn't a distraction, I guess? I don't know. The system is more Brave New World in the sense that people are more, docile through pleasure and comfort now, right? There's more austerity in 1984 with all the rations, people getting their chocolate taken away, a little bit of nasty chocolate. No more nasty chocolate. You don't even get nasty chocolate. You get nothing. Here, you get an abundance of things. Too many options.
There's too many options.
And they live, if we all had the sunglasses in that movie where you look at all the advertising and marketing and propaganda, you'd be able to see, just obey, consume. That's very much a Brave New World way of organizing society.
Work is fun.
The harder we work, the more things we can buy.
New things. I hate old things. I want all new things. Ending is better than mending.
If it's broke, don't fix it.
Keep people consuming, drugging themselves. Our soma is everything. We don't have a literal soma pill, but it could be anything from antidepressants, I'd say, cannabis, vaping, alcohol, food, any addiction. We're all addicted. You can be addicted to anything. Working out too much. It's so easy to just stay in that chemical hit. Now you could say, well, is that such a bad thing? Well, that's kind of the point made in Brave New World is people are happy now. Yeah, sure, they don't really realize the costs of their happiness. It's not a real happiness in the sense that we still require so much distraction and drugs required to get us through because it's not a real peace on earth. It's artificial. It's kind of manufactured and contained in a unjust and unhealthy way. But the argument could still be made that, yeah, Brave New World is still better than 1984, where everyone kind of is miserable, except for maybe a couple of the high ups. But I mean, if everyone's that miserable, how could it not affect you negatively, you know? Another Brave New World concept I can think of is where they intentionally limit scientific exploration and discovery. It can continue to a degree technologically, again, to create better soma drugs and better movie technology to keep people distracted and entertained. But when it comes to real exploration into new domains of science that could, you know, harder to control, we don't know what the outcomes will be. Those are not really allowed in Brave New World. And you can make the argument here that a lot of times science gets stuck in certain paradigms. Some people have talked about string theory as kind of a dead end, and we just keep funneling energy and money into that, maybe because it's a dead end. Who knows, right? And if we'd explore other things, that could maybe shake things up too much. Technology is allowed to improve in terms of more pixels in your phone, but in terms of exploring science in ways that could shake up the foundations of what we believe to be reality, you know, whether it's still wanting to avoid, it's starting to get better now, but for the longest time, there was an avoidance on studying psychedelic drugs and meditation and more spiritual things that science tried to kind of keep separate, but maybe they're kind of more interconnected than we think. And if we learn more about that stuff, that might shake up society in a way that could be disruptive to the status quo. I guess in conclusion, I agree with both sides. I think we live with elements of 1984 and we live with elements of Brave New World. And it's a very lethal combination of the two. And it's an interesting mix. Now, again, you could say our world is still better than those two books. You could also make the argument that it depends on where you happen to be in this world. There's a lot of people living full hedonistic distractions and they don't really have relationships, as it were, to themselves, nature, other people. They're just lost in the heat of the moment of drug-induced ecstasy, or people constantly just listening to music, ignoring the world around them, ignoring their friends. Everyone's just on their phones. They're all hanging out, friend group, they're texting. That's very much like a Brave New World kind of situation. And then 1984, I mean, there's still plenty of people that are living in constant fear of bombing and war and propaganda. That's the thing with 1984, is constantly hitting people over the head with endless propaganda to get people to believe 2 + 2 = 5. We live in that world too, where there's many different, I think, factions of the propaganda, but they're all trying to get you to believe in a version of 2 + 2 = 5, I think. So they're all kind of fighting over the minds of people, it does feel like. Overall, I think we have to contend with elements from both books and other stories and other dystopias as well, and keeps things interesting, I guess. But I'd say those are my thoughts on, are we living in George Orwell's 1984 or Aldous Huxley's Brave New World? What do you think? Are we living in one or the other, or both, neither? Maybe there's a whole other story or whole other dystopia that feels more realistic to how we're living. I mean, even I'd say Dave Eggers' The Circle is kind of maybe more of a modern mix of both as well, because that brings in social media and like the endless needing to stay online and plugged in and commenting and liking. And so maybe we're living in the circle now. I don't know, you know, but I'm curious to see what you guys have to say. Yeah, we'll have a time of it. That's it for this discussion though. Yeah, take care. Peace.
Get out or I'll call the cops.
Call the cops? You know what you need? You need a Brazilian plastic surgeon.
I've got one that can see.
He's a tall Caucasian male, doesn't appear armed, wearing sunglasses.
I don't like this one bit.